Okay, Councilwoman Powers, you mind starting again with us?
All that I was going to say is that historic tax credits have played a very important role in our downtown in Bristol, Virginia, as well as the construction of the Birthplace of Country Music Museum. Without the historic tax credits, a lot of the work at the museum would never have been accomplished. So I'm excited that at last, because we've been asking for consideration of historic tax credits for at least the past 7, if not 8 to 10 years. So good job.
Okay. All right. Any other comments on historic tax credits? Okay, moving on then to local revenue. Now, these have been before you before. I know this group looked at these last year, and we briefly discussed them. But with the loss of the hall income tax, which concludes, I think, in January of this year, we have had progressively to have to deal with lost revenue as a result of the loss of the hall tax. There are some local revenue opportunities that we would like the General Assembly to allow each city in the state of Tennessee to avail themselves of, and then it becomes a decision of the local governing body whether they want to implement those revenue sources or not. One that they would not have to is raising or eliminating the single article sales tax cap. And I know some of you have been on council for a long time, and I'm going back a number of years beyond that. This item has been on our legislative agenda forever. I did notice that TASER, in the summer study this year of municipal services and local government revenues, did gravitate toward this and talked about one potential for municipal governments to meet or bridge budget gaps would be to raise or eliminate the cap on the single article sales tax. The single article sales tax cap, as it's written today, it allows the cities to charge or to assess their local option sales tax on the first $1,600 of a single article. And this is typically, we think of it as motor vehicles or boats or things of that nature. So, and the often used illustration here is that, a brand new $85,000 Lexus, locally, they pay the same $36 per item as someone buying a $1,600 used Toyota. And there's something wrong about that in terms of local government not getting their share of a sales tax of a very large ticket item within their jurisdiction. For each $1,000, if you eliminated it, then it's applied just like the state sales tax would be on the final settlement cost of the item, boat, car, whatever. If it changed to just an additional $1,000 for each $1,000 incremental change that cap was increased, it would result in an additional $2,250 to cities like Bristol that have a 2.25 local option sales tax. So this is a bigger issue. I think Kingsport has a 2.75 local option sales tax. So you're looking at $44 as a cap on any type of large ticket item in Kingsport, and then I guess it would be $27.50 for each $1,000 that would be assessed beyond that. So that's a source. And again, this is a tax it's essentially a tax that's it's not a property tax in the sense that it is a non-progressive type of tax. Tim? The local option restaurant tax, we've talked about this a lot. And again, whether we have, before any city would implement something like this, there would certainly be a lot of dialogue amongst that local governing body. And in all likelihood, like conversations that we've had here, such a tax would be tied back to, if implemented, would be tied back to some significant project that the community could get behind and support with a level of energy that would make it politically feasible to adopt a tax of this nature. Sevierville, Pigeon Forge, and Gatlinburg have a restaurant privilege tax. They have a property tax that is minuscule. Their sales tax, restaurant privilege tax, lodging tax, and so forth really drives their local economy there. Tourism is a key piece of our economy. And this type of privilege tax would allow us to invest in the tourism infrastructure. The way the legislation is crafted for Sevierville, Pigeon Forge, and Gatlinburg is 75% of the proceeds from the restaurant tax is allocated to tourism infrastructure or tourism marketing, with 25% then going to the general fund to go for other purposes. I know Councilman Keene has mentioned school purposes and so forth. So those revenues could go to any other municipal purpose identified by the local governing body. It would require, as has been drafted previously, 4 out of 5 of or 2/3 majority of the council, which would require 4/5 of this council to adopt such a measure. But again, it's just a tool in the toolbox that our states around us have utilized. Virginia has a meals tax, and North and South Carolina both have a meal tax. I think Councilman Keene and I both took a tour with the National League of Cities into Rock Hill, South Carolina. And a lot of the matter of fact, all of the tourism infrastructure, not that, a substantial amount of the tourism infrastructure that was created in Rock Hill was derived from South Carolina's restaurant tax. Moving on, in addition to that, it was mentioned, I think Councilwoman Powers mentioned this a few years ago, that it would be nice or it would be appropriate to have a local option tax on tobacco products. We do not have that currently. Currently, tobacco products have the standard state and local sales tax that are assessed to them. And then the state has an additional 62 cents levy per pack of 20 cigarettes. If local governments had the option to add an additional levy on the cigarettes, it could help to deter harmful use of tobacco products, and then also increase local revenue to deal with some of the public health issues that tobacco products cause. And then lastly, and this is one that's been around for a long time also, but the State Department of Revenue currently collects all local option sales tax on a monthly basis, and they charge the local governments generating those local option sales tax a fee of 1.125% for administrative costs. And then they send those local option sales tax back to the county in which they were collected to be distributed to the municipalities within that county on a situs-based formula. So then when those dollars come back to the county, then the county takes 1% of that for administrative costs before sending those funds back to the municipalities in which they were generated. We feel like this is a very minimal calculation and doesn't warrant the additional 1% that's levied by counties in distributing that. And what that amounts to Bristol is almost $128,000 last fiscal year. So pretty soon this adds up to real money. It's almost a penny and a half on the property tax rate. What we would ask is that the Department of Revenue, once they've calculated those, rather than the local option sales tax that was collected, then send that directly to the cities and not to the county, that would, and necessitating the 1% handling fee that goes forward with that. Any questions on local revenues? These are, like I said, these are things that you've all seen before. Okay, moving on. The last item
I've got one question.
Okay, sure.
How long is it taking us now to get these dollars of when the state sends them to the county, and then how long does it take the county to turn around and get us that money? Because that's another portion of this also, that the interest on the money and having that. So
we find out how much was collected approximately 6 weeks after the closing of the month. And if you'll recall, I sent each of you information regarding local option sales tax that was collected in September, that we received that information around probably the 19th of November. Now, we have not seen that check, so to speak. That's generally another 4 weeks. And if I'm incorrect in that, or that timeline has changed, I know that's the way it has been for probably 2 years now. Terry, you're on the call. If that has changed recently, please speak up.
No, that is correct. We used to get the check if the calculation was due in the month of, you would get the check by the end of the month. But lately, the check's running a few weeks into the following months, and the only time that we're getting the check in the month that the calculation is done would be during the month of August. And we do several phone calls and track that down. And we've gotten one this year, I think, that's come in a few weeks earlier. But the majority bill's correct. They're running a few weeks behind.
At what point does the county get the money?
They get the money, like if it's for, I'm going to use the October as an example. If October is the month of the sale, it's turned into the state in November, and the county gets the funds in the middle of December.
So they're running pretty much a 45-day turnaround.
Well, no, it's a little longer than that for us to get the check. It's almost
No.
21.
We would get the check in January currently.
Right. For the county for the county, if it's submitted, sales tax revenues of October turn into the state in 1st of November, turn around back to the county mid-December. That's about a 45-day turnaround to the county.
Correct.
And then we're saying that to come back to us is 2 weeks or a month.
It's closer to a month.
And that's been in play, what now, almost 2 years?
Mm-hmm.
Year and a half to 2 years, I guess.
And prior to that, it was more like a couple weeks after.
It would be within 2 weeks after that they received the funds. So we would get it by the end of the month.
So what's the change been?
I think they had changed in internal staffing on the county side. And I've been informed that they said the money's coming from the state a little bit slower than it used to. But I think it's more of a staffing change.
It seems like there's two fronts we need to get them to kick in a little quicker.
I think a lot of it, quite honestly, if we could have a direct transmission of the local option sales tax due the city directly to the city from Department of Revenue, that would eliminate our problem. And it would result in substantial more funds. Like I said, that there was a carve out of about $128,000 for fiscal 2020 as a handling fee going through the county trustee's office. Other questions?
What's the kickback? I mean, why is the state legislature, are they not wanting to support this?
My guess is from a General Assembly standpoint, and again, it probably gets back to, again, this is my speculation. If I were an elected representative and looking at this issue, I've got to pick between the county and the city, and that's a tough choice. Because if Bristol gets 128,000, means Sullivan County gets 128,000 less. And you can see with Kingsport on that same slide, you got over twice that with Kingsport, and then in Johnson City, it's even a bigger issue with Washington County.
There are many of these issues that are skewed towards the county side of thinking on this stuff. So this is one of them. The other thing is our schools. There's a lot of things that are unfairly skewed towards the county.
So does anybody know right offhand what the whole income tax for the county, the elimination, what it means for the county? Because they get it as well, right?
I would think that they do. I have no idea the value of that for the county.
I assume they're losing out also.
This has been a long-standing issue. Gosh, I can remember this being in our legislative policy for years. And I think, Councilman Turner, to your question, why did they not do that? I would point to it's a politically tough position to take, because it does take revenues out of your county's coffers. And I think anytime you pit a state official between a municipal interest and a county interest, you put them in a real tough spot.
Well, if they're using it as, I guess of the fact of that it's a income stream instead of, I guess, of being, if they're charging the percentage as an administrative fee, I guess it should be that instead of a revenue stream.
I think and that's the reason I go back, just send it directly to the cities, and then you don't have the handling fee, the administrative fee, and so forth. But perhaps even more significant than it's the cities that provide the level of services that make it possible to have the brick and mortar development for the retail centers to grow and prosper. And without we need every opportunity to derive the revenue source to support that infrastructure. Without the cities, the state, the state's whole fiscal plant is built around sales tax. So cities drive the revenue health of the state. And this is an element of, again, sales tax are generated in large part by cities. And yet we're carving off a piece of that sales tax that comes back as a result of investments that cities made, and you're dropping them with the county trustees. How equitable is that? Other questions?
It's definitely one to go after, no question about that.
Okay, the last item deals with electronic meetings, and I know probably all of you at one time or another have been involved in a situation where you've had to be out of town and wanted to participate remotely, and there were statutory limitations to how you could participate. We found in the last 8 months that we can do business as we are today very efficiently by electronic means, and the public can participate. We had an interruption a while ago. We stopped conducting our business. We picked up conducting our business as soon as we were back online. You can watch us on Facebook. You can go online and get through board docs all of the supporting material for each of the agenda items that we have. We've become very effective in conducting government business electronically. We would like to see this continued by statute approved by the General Assembly that would allow us to meet as needed electronically, and perhaps this virus is going to have an end at some point, and there's going to come a time when we're going to come back together and meet. But there's also going to come a time when an elected official, for one reason or another, cannot participate in person, and it would be a great opportunity to allow them to participate in the same format that you're participating now. But that does require an act of the General Assembly to do that, and that's what this particular issue addresses. Questions?
If I'm correct, the General Assembly, they can.
They can, yes.
Do that. But
that's what I understand.
We can't.
That's correct. That is correct. So hopefully this is not a large ask. I think in Governor Lee's order that extended this opportunity on through the end of December, he did put some safeguards in there to protect the public in terms of being able to watch government and the media to be able to report on government agendas, and supporting materials have to be made available. We've done this all along. Board Docs has allowed us a format to do this for years. It's easy to see who's speaking on the platform that we're using here today. While it's a little bit awkward, as we saw during the last city council meeting, for an individual to call in and participate, we're working on that. But I think we will continue to refine processes. But I think all of the safeguards that the governor would like to see for electronic meetings, Bristol does that in an exemplary fashion. Questions? Like I said, there are a number of other items in here that I chose not to pull out. These are most of them have been a part of our policy document for years.
I can weigh in. First off, I think there was inclusion in the foreword or the beginning to acknowledge COVID and talk about where we are, and also where we don't know where we're going to be. So that we want to be sure that our citizens have support. And then I had raised a question in that vein about healthcare, and I have not gone back to find my previous legislative agendas, but I think for several years we did include healthcare. And that was at a time where it was prior to Ballard's merger. Both Mountain States and Wellmont supported some expansion of healthcare. Our chamber also endorsed that. And then during that time period, Virginia then had support for expansion of Medicaid, and that was led in our region by Representative Terry Kilgore, and folks got on board. Anyway, so I don't have a copy for that wording, but it was generally worded. It was just saying being sure that we can offer health care to as many of our folks. So whether there's any interest in looking at that verbiage and including it, with knowing at this time it's more important than ever for folks to have access to health care that they can afford. With COVID, we want people to be able to get the health care that they need, so that they aren't a danger to others, as well as so they can be good workers themselves. Also, it's looking at in conjunction with our addiction rates and opioid. There's some holdback in people's ability to seek treatment or effective treatment if they don't have insurance that covers that. So anyway, again, I have not gone back to look at that verbiage that was pretty general. But was agreed upon for, I don't remember, 2 or 3 years that we included it.
It was actually the 2014 year, and I don't remember it beyond that, Margaret. But okay. For our 2014 legislative policy, there was wording in there on the expansion of Medicaid, essentially. And I don't remember exactly how it was worded either, but it was a long.
Because I don't think it used.
I don't think it went as far as to use the terminology, but
because at that time Tennessee was heavily looking into what other options, as they currently are, still looking at what other options there are to be able to provide health care to more folks.
Anything else?
If you haven't if you haven't seen Hillbilly Elegy just yet, it's a new Ron Howard film that's out. It's a quasi documentary. It's very interesting. It speaks more to problems of opioid addiction in Appalachia, and I think you'd find it interesting to watch.
I'll just note the book as well as the film has been really has greatly disappointed folks, academics in Appalachian studies. It is not a documentary, and that was part of the problem with the book. So anyway, but yes, it talks a lot about the opioid epidemic. So one other thing that I thought, that whether it's something we want to, it would add or whatever, but we have different organizations that have their own legislative agendas. So like the NETA has a legislative agenda for what can help them achieve their goals. Also, I referred to previously the Tennessee Commission on Children and Youth. They have, and those are both quasi-state organizations that work in our area, et cetera. So whether there's opportunity to look at those agendas ever and just provide statements that we support those agencies and support their pursuit of being able to be more effective. Not necessarily to look at for this time, but something that to think about for future, whether that's something that would be helpful.
Anyone else? Okay, we'll move on to item number 10, Mr. Sora.
Okay, this item came out of our council meeting earlier this month. And at your December 1st meeting, you'll have an item for consideration. It will be the second reading of the rezoning of 1741 and 1745 King College Road. As council's aware, this came as a result of a rezoning request for 1745 specifically. This is the former site of the Cornerstone Chapel. It's currently zoned R3, and which is multifamily residential, and the request is have it rezoned to B1B, which is neighborhood shopping and commercial district. When staff evaluated this 2.81 acre tract in terms of the zoning for the surrounding areas, it was noted that the property immediately to the west, 1741, had a split zoning designation of R3 and B1B. 0.1 acres was of that tract was zoned as R3, and the discussion between staff and the owner was, would you like to see this move forward to a consistent B1B zoning, of which an affirmative answer was received. Properties further to the west are also zoned B1B, so it was appropriate for staff to make the recommendation to the Planning Commission, and they unanimously approved the rezoning request. During our meeting on November 10th, there was questions regarding the depth of the property at 1745, and is it appropriate to continue that rezoning of B1B all the way back to the back property line. I think there were also questions regarding the adjacent properties on the northern portion of the property, or the top as you're oriented there. Were they duly notified as to the potential rezoning of the property and so forth? So it was suggested that we bring this issue back for discussion during our November 24th work session. Sherith Young, our Planning Services Manager, is with us today to once again review the scope of the rezoning request, and then respond to the additional questions that council had, and then further explore the appropriateness of the rezoning and consideration on second reading. Sherith?
Thank you, Mr. Sora, and good afternoon, Mayor Luttrell and City Council members. We do have a couple of slides for you here just to kind of reorient back to this issue from the City Council meeting on the 10th. Here's a slide that shows the aerial view of the property. Outlined in red is the subject parcel at 1745 King College, and also that small triangle that Mr. Sora alluded to in his introduction. So these are the parcels under consideration for the rezoning. Here are just a few photos of the site. So here you are looking at the triangle. from the church property. Here is the church property from King College Road. And here is a zoning map. So this shows the area here along King College Road. So the yellow indicates B1B, and that's the zone that's present along much of King College Road on that side of the road. The two parcels that are outlined in red have a lighter pink purple color, and those are the parcels that are currently zoned R3. So again, their request is to take those parcels that are outlined in red and rezone those to B1B. The next slide shows the city's future land use map. And this map shows a neighborhood commercial land use classification along King College Road. So that's what the laser is kind of showing, that's hatched. It's kind of a pink and red hatched area. The orange shows a higher density residential land use classification for this area. So our land use map we're showing the parcels here, but it's not drawn to be parcel specific. So we always do consider all the land uses that apply in a given area. So this parcel, of course, has some split zone on it of neighborhood commercial and the residential land use classification. So the next two slides just show that summary list of permitted uses and special use permit uses in the different zones. So here's the R3 permitted use list. Allows for multifamily uses, farming, public parks, public libraries, bed and breakfast. Special use permit list is on the right. So that's going to include your churches, daycares, hospitals, philanthropic institutions, and clubs. And that's going to be the same list that you'll see in both R3 and then the B1B. Here's the B1B permitted use list. So you'll see it includes single family and duplexes for residential uses, but it also expands to include some of the neighborhood type businesses we would think of that would service the neighborhood. So some smaller retail trade establishments, some professional offices, limited repair and maintenance uses, and items such as that. The next slide, just a quick summary of public notification items. So signs were placed on the property to announce the location and information about the meeting and a contact number for staff. So those are out on the property now. Adjacent property owners were notified of this request by letter, and we included in that letter a comment form so they could send us back their comments in a written capacity. And we did receive 2 comment letters back. Both were from the properties in question, and they were both, of course, were in favor of the rezoning. So in light of City Council's conversation during the meeting on the 10th, this map just shows the actual property owners that did receive notification of the request. So you can see highlighted in blue all those parcels that are adjacent to the subject parcels. So these are all the folks that did receive a letter by mail about the project. We, of course, did put up the signs and the signs on the property to notify. We took this to the Planning Commission meeting on October 19th. The staff recommendation to the Planning Commission was to send a favorable recommendation to City Council on the matter due to the B1B zoning present on the adjacent parcels in agreement with the policies of the future land use map. And on October 19th, the Planning Commission voted unanimously to forward a favorable recommendation to City Council on the rezoning request. The only new, any new updated information that has been received in the past, I guess 2.5 weeks here, is you all do have included in your packet some written information from both the applicant and from the owner of the property where Cornerstone Church is located. So they did provide some summary of the intended use, the counseling center, and then some of the land use issues out there as they see it as far as development will go. So that's included in your packet. And then actually just in the past hour, the applicant did send a letter or send me an email that stated that they had been out talking to the neighbors a little bit more. So she's provided a statement that has signatures of 4 additional owners out in that area. They're not the parcels that are outlined in blue that are absolutely adjacent, but there's 2 King College Road addresses and 2 Robin Road addresses of people that do support the project. So that's the updated information I have as of today. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions or expand on any part of these slides.
So I went out and hiked the property a couple of weeks ago, and there is sufficient, if not overly, amount of buffering between properties. One of the things that I had a concern about was if there was going to be any type of intensive outpatient work being done there for treatment of the kids, and in other words, where the kids would be there all day and might have a large group of kids, and there's no plans by the company to do that. The other question I had was if there was going to be any type of group care where the kids would actually stay on property overnight or over a period of months, and there's no intentions there as well. I did speak with Laura. What is her last name? Help me, Sheriff.
Mono or something like that.
Yes, spoke with her. She was very nice. I checked out the website very thoroughly, and I feel like it's going to be an asset to the entire community. And if you listen to her video, it was a little bit puzzling to me as to why she wanted the facility where it was, but it's so that it gives kind of a neighborhood calming effect to kids who are being counseled. So that kind of makes sense and is it put me at rest. So I haven't. I also, by the way, asked if the planning department would. If you noticed in the one of the pictures, the sign was parallel. It was facing the road, which made it parallel to King College Road. So I asked if we could take the signage and turn it where it would be perpendicular to the road, so that when somebody's coming up and down King College Road, they could see it. And we did that. And to my knowledge, unless there's something I haven't heard about, to my knowledge, no one, was against the project. So I think it'll be a good project, and I'll be voting yes for it.
Anyone else?
I'll say I will continue to support the rezoning, but just a reminder that if it were a special use permit, then there's more details on the project itself. So it is important for us always to look at the zoning and what's allowed with the zoning, but I think that is appropriate for this area. Thanks.
Yeah, I feel like we've all vetted this one pretty well, and I agree with Councilman Keene that this could be a great project for the community.
Okay. We'll be bringing that before you, like I said earlier, for second reading and public hearing at your December 1st meeting.
Okay, here no other discussion. We'll move on to item number 11, Mr. Sora.
Okay, Mayor, this deals with the proposed rezoning of 837 Hill Street. You may recall some time ago, as I'm closing some things up on my screen, there was a rezoning of property at the corner of 9th and Hill Street that was by Willis Properties Management Group, and they purchased the 2 properties. They approached council regarding the rezoning, and there's now an inventory storage lot at that location. The 837 Hill Street is adjacent to that property. Wallace Properties Management Group has secured ownership of that property. It's currently zoned RE, established residential, and the owner requests that the property be rezoned to B1A. If the rezoning request is successful, they will demolish the structure and expand their material storage lot on that piece of property. Planning Commission reviewed this matter at their November 16th meeting and gave a favorable recommendation to City Council. This will be on your December 1st agenda for consideration on first reading. If approved on first reading, then a public hearing and second reading will be scheduled for your January 5th meeting. Sheriff is going to detail the issue, the proposed uses that could be on this property, and respond to questions. Sheriff?
Thank you again. So yes, today we'll be looking at the requested rezoning at 837 Hill Street. It was actually in November 2019 that City Council approved the rezoning of the 2 parcels adjacent to this one, so it has been about a year ago. This site is approximately 0.18 acres, and the existing land use here is a residential home. So this map shows the parcel in question. It's hatched in red here. So this one is right to the right beside of this one, the 2 parcels where the new inventory lot is. These were the 2 parcels that were rezoned in 2019. So this one is next in line for coming back down Hill Street towards Volunteer Parkway. The next map shows the zoning map. So you can see here that the 2 parcels there on the corner are purple, so they're zoned B1A. And then that remaining surrounding area in yellow is the RE district. So that's the established residential district. And then the blue area is the current location of the used car lot, Wallace's used car lot, the gas station here on the corner. And then once you go on down Volunteer Parkway on either side, you've got B3 zone in place here on the parkway. Here is a photo of the home that exists on the lot at 837 Hill Street. So this is looking at the house from Hill Street. The next photo is looking from the alley. So this is looking at the back of that same house. Here's a chart that shows you the existing zoning and existing land use in this area. So you do again have the property itself is currently zoned RE. To the south and to the east, you have RE zone property. To the north, you have B3, which is the used car lot. And then to the west is zoned B1A, which is the Wallace, the inventory lot for Wallace. So those are the existing zones in the area. Here's a list of permitted uses in the RE zone. So it's really limited to single family and duplex dwelling uses. There are some special use permit uses that someone can apply for, such as churches, daycare centers, sports clubs, philanthropic institutions. Next slide shows the B1A permitted uses list. And again, this one expands out to include some of the neighborhood type uses that might support neighborhood living. So you have single family duplex development, retail trade, some office uses, some restaurant uses, and then they can do parking lots here in this district. And then the special use permit is really the same as in the RE district. This next slide shows the future land use map. So this is again a parcel where if you're looking strictly at the parcel, you'll see that the future land use is split on this parcel between commercial and then a medium density residential use. Again, we're showing the parcel lines here, but the future land use map, we are supposed to look at all these uses. It's not supposed to be absolutely specifically aligned to the parcel lines, but there is a split here. And you can see that once you go towards the parkway, you're all in the reddish pink color. So the commercial land use classification. And then as you go on into the neighborhood, you're with that medium density residential. So staff's position and recommendation to the Planning Commission on this one and the last application was that provided a bit of a transition into the neighborhood, the B1A zone. So as we always do, a public notification sign is placed on the property to announce information about the request, the meeting, and a contact number for staff. We did notify adjacent property owners by letter. We did receive 2 comment letters back. Both were in favor of the rezoning, and we did receive 1 telephone call thus far, just a person curious about what was going on. So the recommendation again to the Planning Commission was for a positive recommendation to City Council. Planning Commission reviewed this on November 16th, and they did vote unanimously to forward a favorable recommendation to City Council for rezoning of this parcel. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, hearing none, I guess we'll move on to item number 12, Mr. Sora.
Yes, Mayor, our planning staff has been very busy, as you can see from the volume of work that's on our work session, as well as our planning commission. And over the last several months, staff and the planning commission have been in review of our established residential or RE district. The text of that original ordinance, which was approved by council in 2009, and really probably hadn't gone through a comprehensive review since that time. So, like I said, both staff and council have, both staff and the planning commission have reviewed the ordinance in depth in an effort to. The original ordinance, I think had opportunities for ambiguity. Or opportunities to misinterpret certain provisions within the ordinance. So their efforts were to provide clarity and reduce ambiguity, and then also look at some of the uses, especially by special use permit, to determine their continued appropriateness in the embedded in the ordinance. They presented their findings. Or Planning Commission concluded their work at their November 16th meeting and forward a favorable recommendation to council to entertain a text amendment to the RE district in the zoning ordinance. With that, Sheriff, you want to detail the issue?
Thank you. So yes, Planning Commission has worked very, very, very hard on this one over the course of the past several months. Planning staff too has spent a great deal of time mincing every word of it to try to make sure that we have everything clear and concise as possible with this RE update. But the screen in front of you right now includes a bulleted list, and this is also included in your memo, which documents the changes that we're proposing with this draft ordinance. And I won't read you this whole list because I'll go through the slides and kind of work through the changes that are actually on the ordinance. But we really did a lot of cleaning up, a lot of editing. We tweaked the purpose statement. We tweaked the permitted use and special use list just a little bit. But we really focused on really defining what that front facade section means, how it should apply, how it should be interpreted. And then the Planning Commission worked to really develop this concept of a build-to range in this section, which we'll go through here in just a second. I'll show you some illustrations we developed to try to illustrate what this build-to range is. But these are really the changes that are included in the draft ordinance for you all to look at now. And I'm going to go through, Tim, if you don't mind going to the next slide. I'll go through this section, and I think you all have both a clean copy and a red line copy in your packet, so you can kind of look at how many changes there are here and what the changes are. And I can certainly answer any questions about that, but I'll try to, I guess, move as rapidly as possible through this because I know you all want to keep moving, but I also want to make sure everybody feels good about what's in here. So if I go too fast, just tell me to slow down, and I'll be happy to answer any questions as we go through this. So section A is the purpose section, and the section as it exists now does contain some words, terms, items that can be open to interpretation that are a little bit vague. So we really just tried to absolutely get this down to black and white language where everybody can very clearly understand what this district is. And so The intent of this district is to accommodate the development patterns of existing neighborhoods that meet the following criteria or conditions. The criteria or conditions have not changed, so it's basically laying forward the same criteria that's included. And we're saying, when we talk about development patterns, what we're talking about are the items defined in the ordinance below, which are lot size, building placement regulations, lot coverage, building height, and orientation patterns. So we tried to keep it to very definable items that are clearly spelled out in this ordinance, and to not use terms in the zoning ordinance like character or things that are compatible with character of the area, which again can mean something different to me and to you. So it's nice to have something that's very quantifiable in our zoning ordinance, so we know we can communicate that to the public clearly. So section B and C are the permitted uses and special use permit uses section. What's changed here is we did add public parks to the permitted use list. So that was not there, or that is not there in the current edition of the zoning ordinance. And then under special use permitted uses, you did have the sports club use. So it said swimming, tennis, private sports club as a permitted use for special uses, which is common in our special use list. But as we got to looking at it, the Planning Commission discussion focused on, is that really appropriate for these neighborhoods? And then also the residential lot requirements, which we'll go to in just a second, actually stipulate that you can't have a very wide lot. So really these uses that would require a great deal of land aren't exactly practical in the zoning district. So the Planning Commission decision was to eliminate that use from the special use permit list. So may I have any questions about that slide? Okay. So the next slide, I'm gonna make my screen just a little bit larger. Sorry about that. Okay, so the next slide, section D1 talks about residential lot sizes. We actually did not change this section. So this section will remain as it is. Section 1 will not change. But if you look at section 2, this is where we start talking about that residential front facade. So the Planning Commission direction was to be very clear and very concise about what the residential front facade is. And the new regulation would state that for new structures and front yard additions, the residential front facade of the structure is defined as the facade that faces the public street. And it also states, number 2, that the residential front facade shall have an entryway. It also goes on to define corner lot structure orientation. So if you do have a lot that's on the corner, it says the residential front facade for a corner lot shall be defined as the facade that faces the shortest side of the lot that fronts on a public street. So most homes in these areas, these RE districts, the development pattern was to do a narrow lot. So the narrow section of the lot faces on the public street. It's a much longer, deeper lot. So this says that the that facade that faces the shortest side for a corner lot has to have that front facade with an entryway. So number 3 in this section, this gets into the concept of building placement regulation. So prior to this proposal or existing in the ordinance today, there is a front setback, a side setback, and a rear setback. The front setback has been open to interpretation. The language needed to be cleared up. So we talked through this with the Planning Commission, and what they came up with through a great deal of discussion was to develop a build-to range. So if you look, and we can start with the illustration, I think helps it make sense, and then look at the language. But what the build-to range in this RE district is going to say, that if you have a vacant lot, such as that in the center of this illustration, and you want to build a new home, your setback is determined by those structures on either side of you. So you can build as close to the public street as the existing residential structure that is closest to the street. So if you see the existing residential structure on the right here, that one's going to be much closer to the street than the structure on the left. So you can build as close to as the existing structure that's the closest, but you must set it at least equal to the structure that's furthest back. And if you look at this district, there's not a tremendous amount of differing setbacks. There's only a few anomalies, but the Planning Commission discussion was to set this up where it would be easy to communicate where this placement should go. But it also does give somebody some flexibility in moving that front facade around. But it would say that it must be within these same two existing structures. Does that make sense? And Section 3A is the language that just defines that concept. So if you go to Section 3B, so B is at the bottom of the screen under the illustration, and then we do have an illustration to accompany this. This is going to talk about what if you're on a corner lot. So the illustration we just looked at is for an interior lot. This is going to be for your corner. So on a corner lot, and here's an example, you're going to be defined by the adjacent structure. And because you don't have anything on the other side, what we're going to say is that you can have a 5-foot deviation. So you can build as close as whatever that adjacent structure is, and you can go back 5 feet behind it. But that will keep your structure within the existing development pattern of that street. Now the rest of this section, so it's the C, D, E, F, G here, remains the same. The lot coverage, item 4, remains the same. And the building height, number 5, remains the same. And I say remains the same. If you look at the red lines, we may have edited just a little bit for clarity, but there's no substantial conceptual change with anything here. We did clean up if we had something that was a little bit, it just didn't flow very well. We cleaned it up a little bit, and that appears all in those red lines, but there's no big new idea in those sections. The last new concept, though, is item E. So item E speaks specifically to how a structure can be rebuilt if something happens to it and it does not comply with this new building placement item. So Section E says an existing structure that does not comply with the regulations of this section may be rebuilt within the same footprint if a building permit is issued for the replacement structure within 2 years of removal. So if you do have a scenario where the existing home does not comply with this building placement section, then it could be rebuilt in the same location, in the same footprint, if the property owner were to obtain a building permit for it within 24 months of removal.
What about remodeling? If someone added on to their home, is all this still going to will it be the same?
So if they remodeled and placed a new addition onto the structure, they would have to comply with the
Build to
new regulation. Whatever the new portion of the home would have to comply with the new regulations.
Right. So a lot of them, I guess these property owners would not be able to add on to the front of the homes in this district.
if they were already at the closest point, then they wouldn't be able to encroach past it. But we could work with them certainly on if there was another way to meet their what they were trying to do. I mean, sometimes if it's depending on if it's a porch or something like that, some of those things can encroach. So we always look at that with people if that's an option. But now side and rear additions would just have to meet those same requirements that are already on the book. So that's a minimum side yard setback of 5 feet and a minimum rear yard setback of 30 feet. So they'd be free to build onto the side and rear so long as they met those existing setback requirements. And then finally, the last change you'll see here in the actual ordinance for your all's consideration is this chart. This is the regulations chart we use that's in the zoning ordinance. And the RE section has just been cleaned up as far as section numbering goes. So we just went through and made sure everything was still correct there and noticed that it needed an update for the section number. So you'll see that in your red line copy changing, but it's really just a cleanup of numbering here. Does anybody have any questions about those sections, or did I move too quickly through anything I can go back, expand on? I'd be happy to.
Really looks to me like you've covered about everything. I think really good work here, Sheriff.
Thank you. The Planning Commission really put in a lot of effort on this one. Had some really good discussion and conversation on it. So they did the hard work here for sure.
You're being too modest, Sheriff.
Nah. Y'all did a great job on this one. It was very tedious, so they did a great job.
It was a good project to work on.
It was good. It was a good one.
Yeah. Much needed. Okay. Any other questions or thoughts? Okay, well, Sheriff, we thank you for it. And Mr. Sawyer, we're ready to move on to the next item.
Okay. Annually, we're required by statute during the month of December to publish a list of the business meetings and work sessions that City Council will have during the next year. So, Tim, could you put up the calendar for 2021? This has also been included in your board docs information that was posted. Probably the only real question that I had, I think we followed our traditional model of the first Tuesday being our business meeting and the fourth Tuesday being our work session. The only real conflict to that, and council has on occasion elected to move their July date out of that July 4th week. So I ask you to take a look at that. July the 4th this year is on a Sunday, so we would have the employee observed holiday on July the 5th. This would place our city council meeting on the 6th. And we can do that, or we can move it to the 13th, whatever is the will of council in that vein. Also, I would point out in December, much like this year, our meeting next year, our meeting this year is on the 1st, and this I'll go over momentarily. Our work session is slated for the 15th, Tuesday the 15th. Now, this deviates from our standard fourth Tuesday, so as not to conflict with Christmas week. Next year, the first Tuesday is the 7th. In order to not conflict with Christmas week, either before or after, we would place the work session on the 14th. These are just colored boxes on the calendar. It's your decision as to which dates you would want to meet. But these are just thought thoughts as we look at the calendar for 2021. Again, it was posted on Board Docs, so hopefully you've had an opportunity to take a look at it. We did look at in that calendar, you've got your meeting, the work session, and holidays, as well as employee holidays if those holidays landed on a weekend. Thoughts or comments?
I think the July personally makes sense to move that one into the next week.
To the 13th?
Mm-hmm. That's my input.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts?
I would agree.
I concur.
Any other thoughts? The December calendar, does that look okay? Again, we've got back-to-back Tuesdays, but I don't think anyone wants to meet on the 21st or the 28th.
Yeah, I think that looks good as well, Bill.
Sometimes this Tuesday before Thanksgiving can be problematic, but also if the legislature does act and we have abilities to join electronically, that could be very helpful with schedules. So
True.
One thing I did look at also in that regard for November, assuming that National League of Cities is not a virtual meeting next year, that date is like the 17th, 18th, and 19th of November.
right.
I think it would be difficult to have the work session on the 16th and try to travel to the NLC conference the following day.
Right. It might be hard to even have it 23rd. Anyway, that's hard. Either you have to prep because it's our attendance, but it's y'all's staff prep to get it done. Whether moving it to the 5th Tuesday makes any sense. So,
and we can do that. We can do that. That does make some sense, especially given we're at the 7th for our business meeting. Is that a suggestion?
that's a suggestion.
I'm good with it.
Okay. All right.
Vince, what'd you say?
I'm fine with it.
With it changing or with it staying?
With it, either one.
But so far out in the future, I'm good either way as well.
Which one would you like? Would you like it to be on the 23rd or the 30th of November, your work session?
30th.
Okay. All right. So we'll go with the 30th for the work session, and then we're moving the July 6th business meeting to July 13th. Any other thoughts? Anything that jumps out at you on this calendar for meetings? And if not, we'll publish these in accordance with statute next month, and we'll be good to go. I'm going to suggest, given the hour, we've been at this a little over 3 hours now. We've got next on the agenda the rules and procedures of City Council. Quite frankly, there's no time there's no time constraints here. There's nothing that rushes that discussion. I would suggest we bring that back in December and go from there.
Please.
Please.
Ditto.
All right. Okay. Then I guess, Mayor, we're at the point where I'll talk about some meetings, and then we've got a very brief conversation with John Luttrell regarding the city recruitment type video that City Council asked about a month or so ago. Reminder of our meeting on December 1st. It will be a virtual meeting. That will be our business meeting at 7 p.m. You also should have received cards in your interdepartmental mail that was distributed last Friday, advertising our December the 2nd residential developers meeting. This will not be virtual. This will be in the gymnasium at Slater Center, and we'll have box lunches for everyone there. During that time, we'll discuss the changes that have been made to our building codes. We'll also talk about the tap fee holiday. And in addition, Joel Conkin will be there to talk about the 3 redevelopment districts under consideration by the Housing Authority and the timeline for their consideration. Also remind council of the December 9th Networks Board meeting. I believe that will be virtual also, but I'm sure we'll have something out from Abby early next week. Our work session, as we discussed, will be December 15th. That will also be a virtual meeting. And then our next business meeting following that will be January the 5th. And we will have more conversation as to whether we can do that meeting in person or virtually.
And you said December 2nd is at 11 o'clock?
It's at noon.
Noon.
Yes.
Okay.
And that's in the gymnasium at Slater Center. Any other questions regarding calendar for December? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to ask John Luttrell to briefly review the work that staff has put into the video and the marketing as a connected community and an ideal place to telecommute and to relocate. So, John?
Certainly. Can everyone see my screen all right?
Yep.
Okay. I will zoom through this pretty quickly. No pun. Our 10 gig fiber optic network. The goal of this program is really going to be to spur population growth in Bristol, Tennessee by enticing families to consider relocating to our community, certainly with a focus on professionals who may be seeking opportunities for remote work in a more ex-urban environment where they're able to take advantage of lower cost of living, enhanced quality of life elements, things along those lines. So this dovetails with some of the ongoing collaboration that we have had with BTES, certainly once again promotion of their available 10 gig fiber service. There's certainly an educational component of that, helping the world as a whole, as it were, understand what that type of capability means, as well as to educating our own community and our own local folks and getting everyone on the same page, telling the story of what that type of capability signifies for us. And again, the emphasis and the implications that there are for remote work opportunities. The other component of that absolutely is those quality of life elements, whether it be our entertainment, outdoor recreation, nature, certainly those tourism assets that we heard about from some of the other presentations earlier in today's work session, and our low cost of living. There had been some discussion of a video that had been produced by the state of South Dakota featuring their Governor Kristi Noem. As I shared with Mr. Sora, I think at this point I've probably viewed that video more than any other human outside of the state of South Dakota. And it's certainly a very visually impactful video. There are some elements, I think, from a marketing perspective that they could have been a little stronger with. For example, even despite the number of times that I viewed it, I still couldn't tell you exactly what my next steps were supposed to be. So that's why I actually went and grabbed a freeze frame out of the end of the video to see what I was supposed to do. And so they are directing folks to a website at the end of that message that they have. With our video content, our message has to be clear and it has to be tight with a clear call to action. And that's my assessment of what was maybe missing a little bit from that piece. It's also got to be something that we can tell in very short segments. So whether that be a 30-second, 15-second, or even 6-second format that you're seeing in a lot of digital applications right now. Those digital applications would include YouTube. And when we say programmatic video, we're talking about those annoying video clips that play before we can see the video content we actually want to see when we're around the internet. That's some of those 6-second little blurbs that you can't skip through, but you're a captive audience at that point. So you've heard the message. And then, of course, there's traditional TV, whether that be network, NBC, ABC, CBS, those types of affiliates, or cable, which can be more targeted based on content. With the TV discussion, of course, there's a pretty hefty conversation about market selection and where those dollars are best utilized, because there can be a pretty significant cost when you're buying actual TV time. Other content that we're looking at deploying, not necessarily all together with this particular video messaging, but certainly as part of the larger campaign that we've been working on with BTES, includes some things like targeted display advertising, which is the kind of thing you see in mobile apps and on websites, little banners along the side of the page or at the top that you click on. We actually explored a little bit of that with our census marketing here locally. And actually we're pretty successful at that, looking at our click-through rates. Of course, social media is a big one. Print advertising, and when I say print, that may not necessarily mean paper in your hand. It could be digital publications or digital versions of print publications. And then that could be in the form of the display ads, or some what we call advertorial content, where it's paid content placement. It's an ad, but it's written in such a way that it feels like regular editorial content. That's been done a little bit in the past with some of the 10 gig marketing in some tourism publications. I think we would be wise to look at some publications focused more on the tech sector and the people that 10 gig fiber service really holds a lot of meaning for. So I think being selective in where we spend those dollars is advantageous as well. You can keep going on down the road with some search engine marketing opportunities. Maybe billboards, those can be kind of expensive depending on the market you're in, but certainly it's possible. And finding other opportunities, looking at, once it's safe to do so again, participating in some trade shows, having a booth at a conference, participating in some podcast content. There's a lot of opportunities out there that are worth exploring. But all of it comes back to messaging. So we feel that it's most important to deploy the existing branding that we use, that we've invested in quite a bit, and just make it work for us in a very intentional manner. We want to reinvigorate it and really draw some meaning out of the branding that we use as a city. The focus of the messaging is going to be on connectivity, opportunity, and livability. With the video piece that we put together, there has to be some sort of an emotional reaction or connection to the brand. That's critical. If not, it's just another ad. There's no, inducement to take any kind of action, which that call to action has to be clear. So what is that call to action? At the conclusion of the site or of the video, there will be an invitation to visit a website. It's going to be not bristoltn.org. It's not going to be btes.net. We're looking at the development of a separate microsite that would be dedicated primarily to these outbound marketing activities. It's going to be very clean, very sleek, housed outside of our existing site. Certainly, there's a mountain of information on the city's website, because there has to be. For someone from the outside coming in, that can be very overwhelming very quickly, and not necessarily the best way to reach someone who's just exploring Bristol for the first time. So that's why the primary messaging of this microsite would be related strictly to those livability measures, certainly featuring the benefits of our 10 gig fiber capability, and would have links to our other resources that already exist, like our economic development pages, educational resources, and other existing city, BTES, and networks resources that are out there as well. So we can allow people to go as far down the rabbit hole as they want, but we don't want to overwhelm them on the front end. There can be other elements as well, such as maybe a virtual welcome kit to the community that they can access digitally, kind of a low commitment action that they can take to really learn more about our community. Having this extra site also creates the opportunity for retargeting with ad content. So if they visit us once, we know that they visited us. We can kind of nudge them as they make their way around the internet, like, hey, come back to us, learn a little bit more. On the data collection side, we have to have the data to help us refine the message to know if it's working. Some of those analytics they can tell us the approximate location of these visitors, what our click-through and bounce rates are for these ads. Are they effective? Are they showing up to this page and then immediately leaving? Where are they coming from? What pages did they visit while they were there? How long did they spend with us? And after they found the information they were looking for, where did they go from there? So all these things are going to help us paint a picture of the people that view this ad and come to this website. We can have an option for request for additional information where we can capture direct user information, whether that be a zip code, an email address, what have you, so that we can follow up. And certainly there are all kinds of other data sources that we can pull. I do want to provide a sample of what this data can look like. This was done with the assistance of our finance department, who actually, they do collect some zip code information regarding new utility connections of where the individual's prior service zip code was. This was information that Tara had provided from fiscal year 20 for the prior zip codes of utility services that we've mapped out here. This excludes about a 35-mile radius around Bristol, so it's not people just moving from one side of town to the other. This is people moving from really all over the country, and it's interesting to see where some of those concentrations are of where people who have moved here and established utility service. It certainly doesn't capture all rental service unless those are metered separately for water and that kind of thing. But at the very least, it paints an interesting picture and shows us where people are coming from now and where some opportunities might be in the future. Very quickly looking at a timeline from now through December 20th, we're going to be developing that microsite, and I'm sure you're probably wanting to know right now what that website's going to be. We're not prepared to release that name just yet because we want to make sure we secure that domain so that an enterprising individual who may be listening today may not run out and grab it before we can. Certainly the ad creation, finalizing what that actual marketing mix and budget is going to be in terms of TV markets, and making those market selections. From past discussions among City Council, we've heard a desire to explore some of the larger markets in the southeastern U.S. Nashville is certainly a market that would be worth looking into for those folks who may be looking to move to a more ex-urban environment. Cost-wise, they're also a little bit more affordable than some of the larger markets. If you're looking somewhere like an Atlanta metro area or DC, it's easy to spend $10,000 to $12,000 a week on a pretty sparse ad schedule. But somewhere like Nashville, you can get a good solid maybe 15-week or so schedule at a price tag of maybe $20,000, $20,000 to $40,000, and that ad will be seen a good maybe six to 8 times a week on about a $40,000 schedule on some of the network affiliates. If you look at cable, that time's a little bit cheaper, so you get a little bit more density of your coverage there. And you can target it to some of those outlets like your cable business and news networks, where some of the remote working type folks or the tech heavy folks might spend more of their time on air. From January 2021 through April, we'd be looking at those on-air ad flights, as well as deploying some of the elements of the digital campaign, looking at analytics the whole time, seeing what's working, what's not. If we need to pivot midstream because something's just not working, we have the flexibility to do that. And we can also be working on the development of some of those print and advertorial content placements. The other thing that we're looking at right now is the video that we produce. We're having to use mostly existing footage. As much as we love the area we live here in Northeast Tennessee, it's just not the prettiest time of year to film things outdoors right now. For this type of piece, people like to see green trees and blue water, and that's in short supply in the winter months. So as we get into the spring, we can certainly spruce up some of our film catalog. In May 2021 and beyond, we'll keep refining that messaging and the ad content based on what the analytics tell us. Identify any additional channels for the campaign. Maybe we're closer to a normal way of life and we can maybe do some in-person marketing events at some strategic locations. College campuses have been part of our discussion in the past as well, as a place to be very intentional with our marketing efforts and absolutely define what our strategy is going to look like and what the budget might be for ongoing efforts. as we head through the end of the current fiscal year. So that was extremely fast. Again, just trying to get through the discussion today and be respectful of everyone's time. But if there's any questions, certainly I'll be happy to answer those now, or at any point that you all would like to follow up.
And we want to make sure that the direction that staff is going is consistent with the conversation that council had and the desires of council as far as an end product here.
Wow. Thorough. Exciting.
I was going to say that I love the microsite because that's going to really, really help us with data going forward. So that's huge for me. And, the other thing about taking existing footage to make our video is that's going to be probably a quicker prospect than going out and doing new video. Are you thinking in that January to April timeline that we may be able to start implementing some of those, 15-second ads and videos of that type, 15, 30-second ads, fairly early in that time period?
Yeah, I would, by really the first to second week of January, we plan on being at a point where we can be on the air in maybe one of those larger markets like a Nashville or somewhere else throughout the Southeast. We'll continue to kind of comparison shop a little bit on where we can get the best rates at, and keep looking at some of that data. Again, Tara, thanks for getting us that zip code information. That helps us start identifying some of those patterns. And as we look at that and see where the opportunities for improvement are, that may tell us where some of our dollars might be best spent. But absolutely, yeah, first, second week of January, we're going to be on the air. We're looking at 30-second spots for the TV placements. I think we owe it to ourselves to spend that amount of time telling our story, especially here initially. And then some of the digital stuff, the 15 and 6-second probably makes more sense, but the cost there is so minimal comparatively that I think we can get a lot of mileage out of those.
When you're working in a market, you mentioned Atlanta, how many different, and you mentioned someone or Nashville, or whatever the larger market may be. You talked about ad spending, when it came to cable TV versus the network airs. How many videos do you think it would take, or are you talking about using the same video that somebody might be seeing 6 times in a row? Because I've never seen the North Dakota video except for one version of it.
I think initially we probably focus on one version of it pretty heavily. That's the other good thing. Once we start seeing that microsite traffic come through, maybe we're able to identify something that maybe we could tweak one small thing with the imaging or imagery that we're using, and maybe get more of a response out of it. So I think that's something that we'll definitely see evolve as we move forward, is tweaking that so that it doesn't get stale. Nobody wants that. After you've seen it maybe 3-4 times, you kind of start to ignore it. So I think as we move forward, we definitely want to update that.
With the South Dakota campaign, I can't remember if they started with tourism or economic development first, but whichever one they started with, then they gently moved into the second aspect. And then at one point in time, or maybe even still now, they have both of them running at different times, but it's the telling of a comprehensive story. And after you've seen both of them for a period of time, you really forget which one is which, because they're both emphasizing both elements, one just a little more heavily with economic development than the other with tourism. And, John, I think y'all have done a great job. This is exactly what, I was hoping that it would evolve into. And the banner ads are so important, and they are very inexpensive to run. It's like with anything, we all know that the more touches we have, the more imprinting is done. And so, it really takes the whole culmination of what you've proposed here today, whether, it's commercial, print ads, banner ads, all of this comprehensively, and then it generates all of the different touches so that it leaves the imprint that then it becomes, rather than just a thought, more of a go-to, or as you said, a call to action. So I think you've nailed it, and I appreciate your efforts in getting together this plan.
We're excited to show you all the products of it and what the folks in other parts of the country will be seeing after the first of the year. We're very excited about it.
Thank you.
Brand and now market.
Well, and you know, to maybe back up just a little bit. Now, that once we get this up and going, and you know, Bill, I really appreciated your email as to the first quarter of our sales tax generations and all of that. You know, I think going into January, as we go into our budget conversations, we have not, correct me if I'm wrong, but we have not fully leveraged out yet our signage. Bill, is that a true statement?
You're talking about our destination signage that?
Yeah.
No, we have not. Absolutely not.
And so I think that's something that it's timely with everything that's going on that you know, we take a good look at that again and decide what we are going to do with that.
I think staff actually, we have Parks and Recreation and Development Services working on a plan. There's money that was transferred from last year's budget to this year's budget to implement that. So I think shortly after the first of the year, you're going to see using that same theme that we have at our gateway signage tied back into our destination. And Terry, can you give us an update on that? You still on?
Yes, sir, I'm here. We're starting with the parking shields for downtown first. We've got that all mapped out. I think Tim sent the blank down to have the shield cut as a sample. So we're going to attack those first. Metzger's got that all laid out where they go. And then in the background, Tim and I are working on what the big signs are going to look like. We've met a couple times to talk about the locations and what the new sign's going to look like. So we're moving forward. Essentially,
though, you're using that same gateway sign as the template for everything. So, like I said, when you see the downtown parking, for example, you'll have some of the traditional P and the directional Ps, but you'll also have embedded in that sign that same theme for our gateways. The same for our destination signage. And I know that the two departments are crafting now where the signs need to be located and what destinations they are promoting. But again, the same overarching theme that you've seen at our gateways will drive with that signage also. So really, you're going to see a lot of work between now and the fiscal year in that direction.
Yeah, we're working with John to make sure that we keep our brand involved throughout that sign. So John's working with us as well. So didn't mean to leave you out, John.
I was also going to mention, talking about that signage, there was a suggestion at one time about, in essence, a similar type sign to the Bristol sign at the train station on the other end of State Street, which it could be a good idea. It may not be a good idea, but you know, as we're talking about that, that's something that could be done in concert with Bristol, Virginia. I'd like to see us open up a dialogue with them, considering, you know, things that are going to be happening on that end of town, to really have something that really funnels folks down that State Street corridor, and for us out to the Volunteer Parkway as well. And further on that, have we, now that we have the casino being voted in, are we looking at traffic studies, infrastructure studies as to what we may need to be doing moving forward?
Actually, our planning staff and our timeline right now is to have this as part of your January budget retreat. We're looking at, and we haven't had a casino before, but we're looking at studies that have been performed in other communities as casinos have located into those, both pre and post. So there's going to be a lot of positives and there will be some negatives. that are going to come with this too. And I think as we start into the budget year, we need to hear from our planning staff regarding where we feel like the next couple of years will take us. I think on the the headlines from a newspaper today said I think it's maybe spring of 2022 before the temporary gaming would be in place. But we've got to be out in front of that. But there are advantages and there are positives and negatives with the gaming industry in the community, and every study that I've read indicate that. Where our planning staff will be sharing that information with council as we once again prepare for our budget season during our January retreat.
I don't disagree about out west state and right there what I guess we would call 5 Points. Bill, it's my understanding that the land area right there is specifically dedicated to the chamber. Is that correct? Where the old sign used to be?
I don't think it's specifically dedicated to chamber. The history, as I recall it, now we're going back. I'm working for a different city now, but that's all public right of way. It is in Bristol, Virginia. I think it was probably 1983. Through a project with Keep Bristol Beautiful, the chamber did erect the sign that eventually fell over and became in disrepair, and really was quite an eyesore there for quite some time. It was created with the idea that it would sell those plaques on both the front and the back to the various civic groups. I think our utilities had representation there on the back of the sign. But the model was there would be an annual installment paid to the chamber to maintain the sign. Over time, that didn't happen, and the sign fell into disrepair. Bristol, Virginia Parks and Recreation maintained the area all around it. There was a planter box. There were flowers underneath there at one time. There was actually an irrigation system put in there. So the area was well suited for a nice sign. It just needed to be maintained, and the sign was never maintained.
So did I understand correctly then that are we in partnership over that, or does Bristol, Virginia?
Bristol, Virginia solely. And like I said, I was working with their Parks and Recreation Department at that time, so I bring to you some of the history behind that. But that was solely, the sign itself was a project of the chamber, but the beautification of the island there, the construction of the framing around it and everything was part of a park project with Bristol, Virginia.
I don't know if you've noticed that. I saw it this morning. That entire area has been graded and leveled now. Everything's gone.
Yeah,
it's a clean site.
Yeah, I believe Beth indicated at the last chamber board meeting that they're getting ready to do something again and putting a sign replacement out there.
Is that something that it's just at this point it's in someone else's hands, or do we need to ask to be part of that discussion, or what is appropriate for our degree of involvement with that, if any?
Well, I think it's the will of council. If you want us to be involved in that, then we can make those phone calls and become involved in that. What does that end of town look like? And for that particular triangle, it is all in Virginia. But if you're looking at a sign that spans West State Street, then obviously a part of that has to be in Bristol, Tennessee, and we need to be a part of that conversation. We could also be part of any conversation for signage improvements in that triangle. Because it's all in Virginia doesn't mean that we couldn't participate in something that beautifies a gateway to either West State Street or to Euclid Avenue, for that matter. So
I would like for us to reach out and to be, if it's appropriate for us to be part of that discussion. If it has an irrigation system there, if there's water there, there have been some different thoughts thrown out. Yes, the over the road sort of thing that gets TDOT involved to some degree, but you know, a fountain of some kind that's well lit, well maintained right there might be something very nice. You know, there was it had been suggested a fountain that was iconic to the birthplace of country music at one point in time as a water feature. We don't have anything like that in Bristol right now. And I just think there are a lot of thoughts and ideas from a lot of different directions, and it would be great to have a comprehensive discussion if that's appropriate.
I agree with that as well. I think it'd be great as soon as we can to maybe reach out to Randy, Bill, and like to ask you to do that. That's what I was going to say as well.
I'll be glad to.
Yeah, I think overarching, it's comprehensive plan to be sure that things go together well. So
I agree. And, you know, I think we need to be careful. Our sign is so iconic. We would not want to diminish its historical presence.
yeah, the other thing with that is our signage that's there at Regions Bank. So look at it along with the 5 points piece. How do we tie it all in together and really enhance our community by making it work together?
You know, when I first ran for council 7 years ago, or however long, almost 8, I guess, I can't remember. But the one thing that someone said to me, they said, we hope that as we grow and develop, we will retain our essence, the essence of who we are, regardless of what comes in, that we don't necessarily want to look like a little Reno, or that we don't necessarily want to look like some of these other overly lit, overly neon areas, that we still want to retain our beauty. And I think that discussion needs, if it hasn't already begun, needs to begin as to how we, to Margaret's point, bring all of this together, and it just retains the beauty of our area. I think that they've done a great job as far as the design of the Hard Rock facility. You know, I think it's going to be a beautiful facility. I think we've done a great job at the Pinnacle. I think there's been a great job done in our new fire station. And we just want to continue that architectural integrity that reflects our essence. And that's all I've got to say.
I'm done also.
Yeah, I'm done also. I have no comments. I'm ready to go.
Run, so.
The only thing I'll say is wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving and be safe.
Happy Thanksgiving to everyone. Appreciate your patience through a long agenda today, but I think a lot was accomplished.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Happy
you.
Thanksgiving.
Have a good Thanksgiving.
Hey, y'all.